Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Links London, the Links London global headquarters. Today I thought I'd share a little behind the scenes and restoring a pair of vintage, or certainly retro, original Links of London cufflinks. These are sterling silver with a swivel back. They are from 2007. And I'll photograph these in our product photography light box so you get a good close-up view of exactly how they look before, and then we can use the same lighting conditions so you get a fair comparison of how they look before and afterwards, so we're not using lighting and trick photography to make them look worse before and better afterwards. I've photographed them in the same lighting conditions. One of these is quite dirty in the back, probably polish. Pretty tarnished actually, and the thing with these is I think a lot of these cufflinks, certainly later on in production like this, there was surface treatments put on them, platings of some sort, whether it was rhodium or just a surface pacification of some sort, potentially when rhodium got expensive, palladium or a derivative of rhodium. And what often happens with these, the tarnish on these is produce some really cool colours, sort of almost looks like blued steel as opposed to silver oxide. And I think part of that is no one really knew what was going to happen with time and the surface treatments that were applied, only that in the short term they would help prevent tarnish in the retail settings, so that the shop staff weren't constantly having to clean the silver every day, all day, every day, which is what was traditionally done in jewellery stores. So, but what's happened with a lot of this surface treatment, I've noticed, is you almost end up with the tarnish below the surface treatment. So it's not subsurface, it's subsurface treatment tarnish, and some of it looks really cool, but it's uneven. So we'll get whatever mixture of tarnish and surface treatment will take off. These actually have some marks the surface which I can clearly see beneath the tarnish, which may have just been caused, I can't imagine it was caused from where. It was probably more caused from storage and them colliding around in a drawer for well, years now, currently decades. So these might require even more polishing now. These might require quite a bit of hand polishing on the front. What I'll do, I think, is I'm going to sonic these first because they do actually have some dirt or some polish in the back. Then I think I'll put them in the barreling machine with ceramics for a bit, and not too long, and then inspect them, put them in with a mixed shot, which will give us a bright machine finish, certainly in all the backs. It'll clean up the backs, get those nice and polished, and then that's probably as good as they ever were new. At that point they would have been they would have had some sort of surface treatment. But what we'll do with these is actually hand polish them on the polishing machine, and we'll be able to get a nice, hopefully a nice mirror finish on the swivel backs there, and a really bright finish on the fronts, and hopefully remove some of those marks, and they'll be ready for another day in the office. Right, let's get cracking. Cleaning. Okay, our cufflinks have been in the barrel for over an hour now. This ceramic is a cutting media, it's abrasive, so it's removing material, and in so it creates a very dull matte finish on the surface. You don't want to leave pieces in here too long because metal's money, you don't want to remove too much. But what this has done, it's removed the tarnish, it's also removed any light marks and any surface finishing that was applied, so any platings, or it may have had platings or certainly surface finishes applied to it to help prevent tarnish, which are a bonus at the time, but they have a shelf life, so they may have helped prevent tarnish in the period between manufacture and the time of sale. But after a decade or so, the tarnish was coming through, albeit in some places and not others. So anyway, the ceramics removed surface oxidization and light surface marks. So now we need to start the polishing process. And for the first stage, I'm going to use our barrel again, but with a different media, with steel shot, a mixture of steel pins, balls, and sort of satellite shaped pieces, and that will get into all the same way the ceramic has. The pins will get into all the nooks and crannies, but it's not removing metal in the same way, it's not abrasive in the same way the ceramics are. It's polishing, it's burnishing, so it's metal rubbing against metal, and that will create a polished finish, a bright polished finish. And it's really good to get into all the little areas, especially in the backs of these cufflinks, and the areas it's quite hard to get to with traditional polishing mops or brushes. And some manufacturers that's probably as far as these ever got in terms of polishing and finishing in the first place, and then they would have either been pacified to oxidization or plated possibly with rhodium or palladium or some white metal to prevent tarnish. But so anyway, the key point is the barrel finishing can produce very good results, but it's not quite as good as hand polishing, and we want to do a very fine hand polish, certainly on the fronts and backs of these. But we'll get them in the barrel, that will give us a nice bright finish and polished base that we can then move on with a hand polished finish on these. But they look good, they look a lot better than they did when they went in. Okay, our cufflinks have spent a little bit over an hour in the mix shop, barreling away, and it's definitely brightened them up. It's turned what was a dull matte finish into a somewhat brighter satin finish, and it's actually quite a good finish for cufflinks because it's bright satin, not mirror finish, but it's bright enough to almost appear polished, but you don't get fingerprints on them, which is great for cufflinks. Not so much for fine jewellery, but good. It's a good finish for cufflinks, especially vintage and retro ones. A few more hours in the barrel polisher just to get these slightly brighter, slightly closer to a polished finish, and they'd be perfectly acceptable to sell as vintage jewellery. But we want to get a slightly finer finish on ours, so the next step for us is to go to the polishing machine and get a fine finish on these, and we'll be able to get an almost mirror polish on these. But what the barreler has done is brighten up a lot of the recessed areas that would be somewhat tricky to get into with the polishing mops and brushes. So yeah, it's getting dark, it's getting late, so for me it will be tomorrow, but for you in a moment's time we'll be on to the polishing machine and we'll hand polish these, get a mirror finish, or as close to a mirror finish as we can. Okay, let's take a look at our cufflinks. They look like they came up really well during polishing. Yeah, they've got a really good finish on the front now. I think these originally would have been machine polished. You could tell from certainly from the backs, they have almost like from castings going just into mechanical finishing like the barrel polisher. You almost end up with this sort of like orange peel kind of surface finish. A bright finish, but if you're experienced at polishing, you can see it's not quite as fine as a hand polished finish. So yeah, I think originally these were machine finished, so they've definitely benefited from possibly their first ever hand finish. They look really good now. I was trying to figure out what these were called online beforehand, and I was searching for sort of cushion or padded shaped cufflinks, and I did see another pair of these, and they appeared to have the exact same sort of mottled surface finish. I think what had happened with these, because these looked exactly the same as the ones online, and it almost looked like they'd been put in a barrel polisher like we were using, but with a really possibly very fine. There's some of the final grade polishes you can get like sand. They're actually a shell, walnut shell mixed with polish, but because it's quite a loose sand, the pieces collide within it, and they end up sort of dented. It's only noticeable under magnification. They still look very bright and polished, but there's almost like little dents all over them, and that's what these look like. And if you look at the close-up pictures of the other ones online, they look exactly the same. And the only thing that will get that out is going onto the polishing machine, which we've done. And there's still some of that sort of mottled finish on the back. I didn't quite get it out on the back, but I mean, that's how they looked when they were new. It's not like they're damaged or anything like that. It's very hard to notice other than under magnification. It's yeah, and like I say, like on the bars, there was almost like an orange peel effect, but that's almost gone now. And certainly the backs are now mirror finished. The front looks like a disco ball. So yeah, these look phenomenal now, possibly better than they did when they were new. But I'll get some product photography on screen for you so you can see a close-up view of how these look now. And obviously they were very tarnished before we started, so what have we done with these? Ceramic ultrasonic them first of all, just because they were quite dirty. It looked like they had polish in them actually, so at some point someone had possibly tried to polish them. I think that's what that looked like. And then into the barrel polisher with ceramic chips, which starts the sort of polishing process. It certainly gave them a flat matte finish, removes any. These possibly would have been not necessarily plated. They may have been plated with rhodium or palladium or something, but they certainly might have had a surface treatment put on them to prevent tarnish. So just so that they don't need so much work to do. They've got less work to do in retail stores constantly polishing silver, especially items like this where you'd end up with polish left in the intricate areas. Either plating them with rhodium, although it's an expense, it saves a lot of time and effort at the other end. Like, it's an added expense at the manufacturing end, but it saves a lot of time at the retail end. And as as Links of London were manufacturing them, having them manufactured and retailing them, it would have made sense for them. Whereas a lot of the time, if it's a manufacturer manufacturing them and then selling them to retailers, and the retailers, if the polishing's the retailer's problem, they may not add that expense. But for Links of London, it would have made sense to add the expense at the manufacturing end rather than dealing with the tarnish at the retail end. So I think all of the cufflinks towards the end of production would have had some sort of surface treatment to prevent tarnish. And what that appears to be doing is, when it ages, you get tarnish beneath that treatment, beneath the plating, and it looks cool in some instances. It looks like blued steel on these, but what the ceramic chips has done is removed that from all over. It will take off whatever surface treatments were put on these from the whole piece, and then we can start the polishing process from there. So from after the ceramics into the stainless steel shot, which is a mixture of pins and balls, and the pins will get into all the detailed areas, the recesses in the backs of these, and it's almost like quilted leather this, so it'll get into all the little grooves, start the polishing process. But that mechanical finish, which is probably the finish similar to the original finish these would have had, it's bright and shiny, but it's not anywhere near as good as a hand polished finish on the polish machine. But then what they possibly would have done, like I was saying, is they would have then possibly gone from something like the shot into a walnut shell, a really soft mechanical finish that you can put in a barrel. But then in that, because it's quite soft and loose, the pieces bang into each other and you end up with this almost like mottled finish. It can actually make pieces smaller, certainly with curved surfaces like this. It can actually, that collision can actually make them look quite brighter than they are without it. It depends on the piece, but anyway, yeah, these had like that sort of mottled finish on them, which the ceramic probably got most of that off, and then what was remaining, certainly on the fronts and the backs, using the polishing machine has got rid of that. And for these I've used a soft mop, and for silver at the minute, and on these I've used a polish called Hyphen, which is actually a polish designed for stainless steel, and it gives a really nice one. I find it's faster at polishing than using traditional Tripoli and Rouge combinations, Jeweler's Rouge. It's faster on silver, but also it just seems to give a slightly brighter finish on silver than the Rouge almost seems to impart a slightly. It's great, Rouge great on gold, but on silver it gives a really fine finish on silver, but it's slow and it seems to impart a sort of colour to them, whereas the Hyphen, maybe the Hyphen imparts a sort of colour on them too, but I just find the Hyphen looks better, and we always want faster when it comes to polishing. But yeah, the speed doesn't seem to have come certainly on silver, that the additional speed of the polished finish doesn't seem to come at the cost of, there doesn't seem to be a trade-off with the finesse of the finish. It's a really good mirror finish on these, and yeah, they're going to go in store now. They possibly look as good, maybe even better than they did when they were new. Now they've got a hand finish rather than machine finish. But yeah, all that's left for me to do is to photograph those and get them in the store. We don't have the original packaging for these, but I will find some original vintage, hopefully from around the period. What did I say these were? 2007. So they are very nearly 20 years old. Very nearly vintage now. So we'll get those in store. I hope you enjoyed this little look behind the scenes of restoring these cufflinks. I'll see you in the next one. Toodles.